Hello and welcome. I'm Jono Hayes and you're watching W News, broadcasting live from the Arabiya studios. And these are our top stories. The US imposes sanctions on Russia, targeting their two largest oil companies. Putin's responded, calling them an unfriendly act. Marco Rubio arrives in Israel, becoming the latest US state official to visit the region during a shaky ceasefire. And making history, King Charles prays with Pope Leo at the Vatican, becoming the first British monarch to do so in 500 years. To our first story, the three leading candidates for New York City's mayoral participated in their final debate on Wednesday in a last-ditch attempt to sway votes their way. Democrat Zohan Mamdani took on Republican Curtis Sliwa and Independent Andrew Cuomo in a 90-minute period. The trio shared their thoughts on international and domestic issues ahead of Election Day, which is on November the 4th. Chris Gilbert looks back at the best moments of the night.
It was the candidates' last attempt to sway the voters, and the gloves were off. Republican Curtis Sliwa swinging at his opponent's ability to work under President Trump.
You can't beat Trump. He holds most of the cards. He's already cut federal funding for Medicaid, for the SNAP program, and is threatening to cut funds for NYCHA. So if you're all of a sudden going to get adversarial, you're going to lose. And who gets hurt? The people of New York City.
Forcing Mr. Cuomo to defend his record as New York governor under the first Trump presidency.
And you can beat him. I confronted him, and I have beaten him. He was going to quarantine New York during COVID, and I stopped him. He was going to cut aid to federal programs, and I stopped him.
But his record was attacked too. Democrat Zoran Mamdani used Mr. Cuomo's 11 years as governor against him.
The issue is that we experienced you taking a $5 million book deal while you sent seniors to their deaths in nursing homes. The issue is that we experienced you cutting funding for the MTA to send money to upstate ski resorts. The issue is that we saw you give $959 million in tax breaks to Elon Musk. The issue is your experience.
Mr. Mamdani came at Mr. Cuomo again on his personal conduct, leaving him on the back foot.
What do you say to the 13 women that you sexually harassed?
If you want to be in government, then you have to be serious and mature. There were allegations of sexual harassment. They were then went to 5 district attorneys, fully litigated for 4 years. The cases were dropped.
But the Democrat didn't come out unscathed. Mr. Sliwa lashed Mr. Mamdani, accusing him of spreading fear and anti-Semitism in the city.
I hear some people out there saying the Jews, their time is due, which means the same thing. They're frightened, they're scared. They view you as the arsonist who fanned the flames of anti-Semitism. They cannot suddenly accept the fact that you're coming in like a firefighter and you're going to put out these flames.
The fireworks didn't end when the cameras did. Mr. Sliwa told reporters afterwards he planned to be Mr. Mamdani's worst nightmare. New Yorkers go to the polls on November 4. Chris Gilbert, Arabiya English.
Now returning to our top story, and the US has announced new sanctions on Russia, specifically targeting their two largest oil companies. It's hoped the move will pressure Moscow into agreeing a peace deal with Ukraine. Speaking from the White House, US President Donald Trump has told reporters he wanted the war to end after a planned meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin was shelved. Take a listen to this.
When we canceled the meeting with President Putin, it didn't feel right to me. It didn't feel like we were going to get to the place we have to get, so I canceled it. But we'll do it in the future. Today is a very big day in terms of what we're doing. Look, these are tremendous sanctions. These are very big. Those are against their two big oil companies. And we hope that they won't be on for long. We hope that the war will be settled. We would like to see them just take the line that has been formed over quite a long period of time and go and let's, go home. Last week they had almost 8,000 soldiers killed. Many Russians were killed last week. Many Ukrainians were killed last week. We think it's ridiculous. and would like to have it end. I can say is every time I speak with Vladimir, I have good conversations, and then they don't go anywhere. They just don't go anywhere. So in that sense, but no, look, he's fighting a war. He's in a war. That's two very competent sides, and that's the way war is. You never know with war, but I would say that it's time to make a deal. A lot of people are dying.
For more on this, we're joined from New York by John Kavulich, who's the senior editor for outcome modelling analysis at Issue Insight. John, thanks for joining us. Trump saying that his talks with Putin don't go anywhere. It was the second time we've heard that in 2 days. What does this reveal about the White House now and what it actually has a view on Moscow? What is that?
It's still a thought process in transition. There remains one word that President Trump has not used to describe President Putin since the 20th of January when President Trump took his oath for his second term. And that is liar. He has he's done incredible linguistic gymnastics to avoid saying that President Putin has lied to him. Because during the campaign, he took great pains to say that in his first term, President Putin didn't lie to him. President Putin didn't attack anyone. And so we have this really interesting process that President Trump is going through, almost like the stages of grief, as he gains more and more confidence about himself and about how he's interacting with President Putin and how President Putin's interacting with him. But this still is a transition. It's not a defined moment, and we should all be prepared that President Trump could go the other way very quickly.
So we heard him refer several times, President Trump there, and said Vladimir. We're very much on first name terms between the Kremlin and the White House at the moment, it seems. And Putin has now responded, we're just getting these in at the moment, saying that the new sanctions won't affect the Russian economy, saying things like the impact of this will actually, he's turned it almost back around a 180 on this and said the amount of Russian oil in the market, a decline in that will lead to price increases across the globe as well. Is this a symbolic trade tariff once again? Is that what we're seeing here? Or is it something that likely is going to hurt the Kremlin and President Putin may just be staving this off?
It can be everything that you just described. It depends upon what political leadership wants. We go back to the 24th of February, 2022, when Russia invaded Ukraine for the second time. And what was the European Union, NATO, United States? But let's look at what was the European Union response. Political leadership decided that they were going to bring pain to their own electorate, to the people that voted for them, to their taxpayers, to their citizens. And leadership said, we know this is going to be costly, but we're going to reduce substantially the energy purchases from Russia. And it did result in increases, and they weathered it. But they used it as a rheostat, not as a switch. They didn't go 100% right away. They basically just marched it upward and upward, and now we're into the fourth year, and it's down 90+%, but it still is there. Same with liquefied natural gas purchases. And so what President Trump is doing is saying, okay, this can be impactful, but it depends on how everybody plays. And oil prices have spiked 5%. But given that oil prices have been so low, 5% isn't crippling. If they were up at $80, $90, $100 a barrel and you go another $5, that psychologically, that's impactful for people. So, President Putin said what we expect any head of state, head of government to say, which is, this doesn't mean anything. It's not going to affect. It is going to affect the Russian economy. And the sanctions, now we have the 19th package that the European Union is going to implement. They have impacted the Russian economy. But again, it's been a rheostat, not a switch. And so over time, if you sit in water and you slowly, raise the temperature, your body's going to adjust. And that's what Russia's been doing.
What is after causing this now, John? It's been months and months of hesitation here. What's tipped the scales for the Trump administration to finally act and do something?
I think in large measure, the moment or the condensed series of moments that we've now found ourselves for President Trump to say, okay, I'm gonna hit these two large Russian energy producers, is Marco Rubio, the United States Secretary of State. What we've seen in the past week has been and again, it could be temporary, but it is a return to somewhat normal diplomacy. And what I mean is as follows, that we had President Trump announcing he was going to meet with President Putin in Budapest, Hungary. The Russians then confirmed that. Then there was an announcement that Secretary of State Rubio, Minister of Foreign Affairs Lavrov of Russia would meet, and a team would meet before that. And then there was a phone call, and it all got jumbled. But what happened was that eventually there was a phone call, and Secretary Rubio and Minister Lavrov spoke. And what we got out of that, and what President Trump got out of that, and what Secretary Rubio was able to convey to President Trump is, yes, I know you love the optics of meetings. You love the optics of being the center of attention. You love the optics of trying to get a deal where everybody else fails. But sometimes those optics could be worse than saying no. And so, Mr. President, I don't think everything is there on either side for this to be productive for you, and it could be embarrassing. And so we saw some regular diplomacy.
Now, I'm going to put two questions into one here to try and get both of these in, but Zelenskyy has been calling for this exact move for quite a long time, so Kiev likely to be ecstatic with this move. How will Kiev and Zelenskyy respond to this? But also, does Russia really care about these sanctions?
I'll second one first. Russia does care about the sanctions because, as someone who is frequently in the Russian Federation, both decades ago and since the war, or since 2022, there is an impact upon the voters, upon consumers, and it's a rheostat. It's not sudden, but there have been increase in costs of being a Russian citizen. Now, at the same time, you have pockets where, for example, the new iPhone, I think it's the 17 or 18 that's out. Initially, Russia, to buy it in Moscow, the price was quite high, and the prices have come down because supply has gone up. So for the Russian Federation, this is impactful, and President Putin is going to continue with the central bank to moderate. The Russian ruble today is steady at around 82 or so, and it's been relatively steady. Now you get to President Zelenskyy. Of course, he has been saying, thank you for the 19 sanctions packages. Thank you, President Trump. But I've been telling you people you should have done this on the 25th of February, 2022, when Russia started the whole thing. If you had hit them hard and hit everything like a switch, turn it on, turn it off, yes, there would have been a lot of pain, but that might have stopped this from continuing. It may not have, but so for President Zelenskyy, a good day. He's got the sanctions packages. He's got some more military hardware coming in, and the EU is talking about using some of the $320 billion in Russian central bank assets as basic collateral for loan. But now we even have that being the subject of discussion because some of the countries are saying, wait a minute, we don't want to be on the hook for this. Others are saying, well, wait a minute, what are we going to do with the money? And Ukraine's saying, just send us a check. We will decide what to do with it. And the EU is saying, whoa, no. You've got to use it to buy weapons. And those weapons need to be made in Europe. And of course, then President Trump weighs in, oh, wait a minute. We've got some of this money too. So you need to buy. There's all this stuff. And one phrase I always use is the closer everyone thinks we are to a result that we want, sometimes the further away we are from it.
John Kavulich in New York, thank you so much for joining us. US Secretary of State Marco Rubio has arrived in Israel today. He's become the latest senior official to visit the region in recent days. Before landing, Rubio shared his thoughts on the Knesset's move to annex the West Bank, warning it would threaten President Trump's plan for peace in Gaza. Around 700,000 Israeli settlers currently live in the Israeli-occupied West Bank, something the United Nations considers illegal under international law. Now, for more on this story, we're joined from Gaza by MSF Project Coordinator Caroline Williman. Caroline, thank you for joining us. First of all, you're there on the ground. You're seeing it firsthand. How fragile is the current ceasefire really from your point of view?
I think the events of Sunday showed how extremely fragile it is. Already when the ceasefire was announced, it was very clear amongst my Palestinian colleagues that their reaction was not enormous joy. It was extremely cautious. It was people don't know what to expect. People are terrified. People continue to be scared. And day after day, slowly, their fate started to build that maybe this time we do actually have a ceasefire. And on Sunday, this beginning very small sense of safety broke down completely as airstrikes started again. We had a few dozen patients who came in only in our hospital. We had 2 dead people arriving, one unfortunately the brother of one of our colleagues, the other a 1-year-old child. So the human price that is being paid by these grave breaches of the ceasefire is very, very real and felt by people and families here.
So Marco Rubio has warned that Israel's annexation could move to derail this peace process. Does it kind of already feel that that's happening in Gaza, where you are?
I think from my perspective on the ground, it's difficult from the purely humanitarian perspective to necessarily comment on what are all of the different political factors that are playing into the fragility of the ceasefire. But yeah, I mean, what we see on the ground is that it remains very fragile. We continue also to see patients who have been shot by Israeli forces because they come too close to the so-called yellow line, which now is starting to be marked, but which especially at the beginning, people simply did not know where this line was. So yes, there was less bombing, less strikes, but still people are getting wounded. Still people, we see patients as well coming in because they pick up unexploded ordnance as they return to their destroyed homes. They're getting wounded by that. So while of course the strikes have decreased tremendously and they're hitting less people, we still hear them. Today, all day, we were hearing strikes apparently happening beyond the so-called yellow line. It indeed feels very fragile, and in particular, the events of Friday have had an impact also in people's extremely fragile sense of safety in wiping that off the table in the matter of a few minutes of these strikes restarting.
Caroline, the UN's top court has said that Israel has to allow more aid in to Gaza. Is that really making any difference yet? Are you seeing any aid coming in at the moment? Or where are we in terms of how much aid was coming in pre-ceasefire versus now?
It is trickling in, but it's absolutely insufficient for the level of need that we see here. For us as a medical organization, the main issue that we continue to have with bringing in supplies are the so-called dual-use items that are defined by the Israeli authorities as dual use, as in they could be used, according to them, for either civilian or military purposes. What we are talking about for us as a humanitarian organization is items that we need for water purification, to be able to do the sanitation of items also within our hospital materials, external fixators, which are used for people with very complex broken bones, like vital materials to be able to do our work remains blocked. When it comes to food coming in, we are not one of the partners doing food distributions, etc. I do see more food in the markets than when I was here, for example, based in Gaza City back in July and August, when really the famine was at its peak. But it doesn't mean that this food is reaching everybody. And this is why more food and humanitarian assistance needs to continue to come in. We continue to diagnose children with both moderate and severe acute malnutrition on a near daily basis, which really shows that, yes, there is some food in the market, but it's not reaching everybody.
You're with MSF on a daily basis. You have limits, much like most people in Gaza do, limits on media access, limits on the aid, as you just mentioned now. What are the other obstacles that you're facing, that you and the team are facing every single day?
Well, I think this point of the continued insecurity, of course, it is more calm than it was 2 weeks ago, but this continued insecurity and the continued lack of clarity on what is going to happen continues to have a big toll, mainly on our Palestinian colleagues who have been doing tremendous, incredible work, working through 2 years of genocide and this very, very fragile ceasefire. It's helping us to do our work a little bit better. But again, it remains very, very fragile. What we are seeing as well in terms of daily life for people, yes, there's less strikes, but daily life for people remains equally difficult. They still have to line up with their jerry cans to get some drinking water, insufficient, but this has not changed. The drinking water system cannot be rebuilt in such a short period of time. Hundreds of thousands of people remain in tents. We need to expect that they will most definitely spend the winter in these tents. These days, still daytime is warm. Nights are starting to get cold. We need more shelter to come in for people, proper for them to be able to protect themselves from the elements. So in many ways, daily life for people in Gaza has improved in the sense that there's no more daily strikes or there's no more strikes at the same intense level that we saw until 2 weeks ago, but everything else in terms of access to basic services remains for most people just as difficult as it was 2 weeks ago.
Staffing-wise, with MSF at the moment, since the ceasefire was announced, fragile although it is, are you seeing an influx in people who are willing to put their hand up and volunteer and try and get on the ground to come in to help you guys in the critical work that you're doing for the people of Gaza?
I think the key point is that the vast majority of our staff are Palestinian staff. We have 1,000 Palestinian staff across the Gaza Strip. And so while you may see people like me speaking with media, we are a tiny portion of the people coming here trying to make our activities run. So yes, there's a number of us available to do this work. But what for me is the key thing is that we can create the circumstances for our Palestinian colleagues to continue to do their job, despite the fact that they are exhausted, that many of them have struggled themselves to get access to food, despite the fact that they have access to a salary, which is not the case for many other Palestinians, that they are living enormous grief because everybody has lost family, has lost friends. We have lost 15 of our colleagues who have been killed in the last 2 years. And that is for me where the focus should be. How can we help and try to assist our Palestinian colleagues to continue doing the incredible work that they have been doing over these 2 impossible years.
Caroline Wildman from MSF, thank you so much for joining us. All right, let's take a look at some of the other stories that are making the headlines today. At least 40 migrants, including children, have died after their boat sank off Tunisia's coast. Around 70 people were on board, with 30 others being rescued. Tunisian authorities have launched an investigation as the country faces mounting pressure over dangerous Mediterranean crossings. 3 Irish police officers have been injured and 24 people arrested in a second night of violence outside a Dublin hotel, which has been housing asylum seekers. Stones, bottles and fireworks were thrown at officers, with one police vehicle being set on fire. Authorities say the unrest followed a peaceful protest after an assault on a young girl, but escalated due to pre-planned attacks. Former world chess champion Vladimir Kramnik is under investigation over his public attacks on US Grandmaster Daniel Nadrysky. He died suddenly at the age of 29. Kramnik had repeatedly accused him of cheating, prompting claims of online bullying. The International Chess Federation has referred Kramnik's conduct to its Ethics Commission for review, but he denies any wrongdoing. And Delhi's air quality has plunged to its worst level in 4 years following Diwali celebrations. Fireworks filled the sky despite restrictions, blanketing the city in a thick, toxic haze. Officials blame firecrackers and stagnant winter air for the sharp drop in the air quality. King Charles and Queen Camilla are in Rome for a historic state visit with Pope Leo. The King became the first British monarch to pray with the Pope since the Reformation in the 16th century. It's hoped the trip will be viewed as a symbolic display of unity between the Church of England and the Catholic Church. Let's dive into this a bit more and speak to international lawyer and church consultant, Dr. Harry Hagopian. Harry, thank you for joining us. First of all, this is significant.
Pleasure.
King Charles has been videoed, as we saw, praying with the Pope. And for a British monarch, this hasn't happened in nearly 500 years. It's monumental.
You're absolutely right. This is huge. And for those of us who were watching the events that were happening during the day, it was awesome. And maybe many people would say, what's all the fuss about? Well, all the fuss is about the fact that, as you mentioned yourself, there was a separation in the 16th century, some 500 years ago, from the Catholic Church. And it was during the time of Henry VIII. And it wasn't even on any theological or religious grounds. It was only on personal grounds. And then in 1534, that is about 500 years ago, an act of supremacy was passed whereby the VIII became the head of the Church of England versus what was before that as the Catholic Church. So 500 years of listlessness, 500 years of uncertainty, at times of acrimony. I mean, there was some acrimony that friends of mine who are much older than I still remember happening some only 40, 50 years ago. So this symbolic gesture of King Charles going to Rome, meeting with the new Pope, and the King himself is no stranger to the Vatican. I mean, he's been in and out of there many times when he was himself Prince of Wales. This coming together, praying together, not one after the other, but praying together, was a symbol of Christian unity, which has basically characterized every single event that took place this day, Jono.
Both are relatively new in this role. Both of these leaders talk about unity and healing. They are the new charge of the Catholic Church and of the royal family of the United Kingdom. Is this meeting likely to be spiritual symbolism? Is this something that maybe is some political messaging that we're seeing that's taking place?
Well, I think it might be a bit of both. I think, firstly, it's spiritual symbolism. It's the symbolism that two churches, the Church of England and the Catholic Church, are coming together after this separation. And that itself has spiritual resonance amongst many, many followers and faithful from both churches, to see them coming together. I mean, you just look, if I look around me where I usually live in England, you have the Catholic Church, you have the Anglican Church, they're working so closely together, and yet there wasn't this sense of spiritual intimacy that this visit brought with it. But of course, there is also at a time when the world is in ebullition, it's uncertain where it's going, that these two coming together also sort of gives the political message that the Anglicans, the Church of England, the Catholic Church, they're working together, and that Christianity is taking a sense, and that sense is one of inclusiveness, one of outreach, and one of, as some people would hope in these days of wars across the whole planet, one of forgiveness and peace.
Dr. Harry, of course, in the backdrop of all of this is the news back at home, and certainly worldwide even, of Prince Andrew as well. Is that clouding somewhat of the King's wider mission at play here?
But today, when in the morning I was doing another interview and somebody told me that, and I said that for the last few weeks, if not months, all we've heard about is what are the secrets coming out day in, day out about Prince Andrew and his associations, ill-advised associations here and there. But I said, for one day only, let us forget Prince Andrew and let us focus on King Charles III and Pope Leo XIV in order to have some good news rather than constantly harping on bad news. But of course, you're right. I mean, inevitably, we're all human beings. And when we see these pictures of them standing together, at the end of the day, Charles is the brother of Andrew. And therefore, there is always that that pressure, that stress, that uncertainty, that question of what is going to come out from the Pandora's box next. So in a sense, that would inevitably tarnish a little bit the image of anything that the Supreme Governor of the Church of England, the King Charles, would do. But then again, if I can take you for 1 minute, Jono, to what happened outside the Sistine Chapel when the meeting with the Pope ended and King Charles went to the Basilica of St. Paul outside the walls, just a little walk outside the Vatican City itself, he was offered a chair. And this was a special chair that was crafted for him and put in the apse of the Basilica. And what was written on it was a Latin inscription, Ut unum sint, that may they be one. And I think at the end of the day, today, it's more the may they be one than what is happening, whether it's because of the all the stories we're hearing, whether it's sex, whether it's this, whether it's that. So I'm hoping that it will be a positive bit of news that will lighten up the mood a bit and give people a jolt to look at the positive and not only at the negative.
And it's been a multi-faith kind of couple of days for King Charles. He was paying a visit to a synagogue in Manchester following that fatal attack as well. Is that somewhat of an attempt by King Charles as the head of the Church of England to soften ties between all faiths?
No, yes, in the sense clearly that is a fact. I mean, that is what he was doing, and that is what the role of the king and before him his mother, the Queen, had to do, to go and soften the situation, make things better, try to heal wounds, try to heal rifts. But let us not also forget that this is not new for King Charles. I mean, since donkey's years that I've either heard of his activities or known him a little bit, we all know that King Charles has two things that have been quintessential to him in his life. One was the interfaith issues. He's very big on that. Interfaith, particularly with the three monotheistic traditions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. And the other one is basically on issues to do with creation. And in a sense, the theme of this visit that was chosen for him when he arrived in Rome yesterday evening basically blended both together, interfaith and creation together. And I think he is at his happiest when he talks about these things, when he goes to the Sistine Chapel. He loves music. When he goes and listens to that music, these are the things that make him happy. And at the end of the day, this was supposed and is a joyous occasion. So why not do it on those issues that are closest to his heart, as well as to those of Pope Leo XIV.
And Harry, one final question before I let you go today. There is the fashion stakes, which were high, and we've seen Queen Camilla in a rather dour outfit, but very good reasoning behind that as well. And this stems back to tradition when a papal visit ensues.
There is a tradition there. Not everybody has subscribed to this tradition, Jono, but most women who've come to meet any pontiff, any pope, be that Leo, be that Francis, be that any of the predecessors, there is the tradition that they should wear something in black. And Queen Camilla subscribed to that tradition. And if you noticed, or some of the viewers who might have been tempted to watch some of the pictures that came out afterwards, for instance, when they went to the Basilica outside, when they went to the Pontifical Beda College, etc., when she was there meeting with the nuns while the king was talking to the fraternity of Commonwealth people, be they ambassadors, be they trainee priests, be they other people, she changed into a white dress. So yes, she subscribed to that tradition. And as you well know, tradition is something that has not been completely yet expunged from our lives in the UK in the 21st century.
Dr. Harry, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
Speculation is mounting over a possible meeting between US President Donald Trump and Chinese leader Xi Jinping. That's as Trump embarks on a high-profile trip to Asia. He's first since entering the office for the second time. It comes amid renewed tariff battles and geopolitical tensions, and experts say that any face-to-face meeting is likely to shape the immediate future of the world economy. Patrick Falk has this report.
The last time leaders of the world's two biggest powers met was in 2019 on the sidelines of the G20 summit held in Osaka, Japan. Ties were already strained then, but they've gotten a whole lot worse since. And yet, speaking during a meeting with NATO Secretary Mark Rutte on Wednesday, the US president raised expectations the two sides could turn a corner with one another.
I think we'll make a deal. I think we're going to make a deal on the rare earth is the least of it. Look, the tariffs are much more powerful than the rare earth. The rare earth is a disturbance, but there's a lot of rare earth around. I'll tell you, I've had more calls on rare earth. We've got it, everybody's. We'll make a deal on, I think, everything. I think we're going to make a deal on soybeans and the farmers.
Beijing's recent restrictions imposed on rare earth exports are a sore point for Washington. But there's much more the two leaders will need to hash out with one another. For his part, President Trump says one key issue he'll raise will be over concerns about China's purchases of Russian oil during a potential meeting. That's if it actually takes place. For now, no meeting is confirmed. There was a coy response from China's foreign ministry on whether it'll go ahead.
Head of state diplomacy plays an irreplaceable strategic leading role in China-US relations. The heads of state of China and the United States maintain close exchanges and communication. Regarding the specific issue you mentioned, I have no information to offer at this time.
The leaders will likely only commit if they know there can be some positive breakthrough to come out of it. Trump's trip will include stops in Malaysia and Japan before attending the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit in South Korea. It's where the face-to-face is most likely to happen.
The APEC members would be very happy if President Xi and President Trump were able to have a bilateral meeting. Whether they talk about trade or not, that's a different story, but they would like this relation to stabilize.
Though hopes of restructuring ties are low. Patrick Falk, Arabiya English.
Now let's take a look at some of the top business news for today. Beyond Meat's shares have jumped over 1,000% in 4 days. It's been driven by a Reddit buying spree and a new Walmart deal. The plant-based burger company, which hasn't posted a quarterly profit in over 5 years, saw its shares briefly rise above $7 before closing at around $3.60. Tesla posted record quarterly revenue of $28 billion as buyers in the US rushed to claim expiring electric car tax credits, but profits fell 37% due to tariffs and research costs. Shares dipped nearly 4% after the results, ahead of a shareholder vote on Elon Musk's $1 trillion pay package. And now turning to sport. The FBI are investigating 6 NBA stars who were caught up in a sports betting scandal. FBI Director Kash Patel says Chauncey Billups, Terry Rozier and Damon Jones are among those arrested in separate but related cases. 6 defendants are accused of being involved in a sports corruption scheme, while 31 others are alleged to have participated in rigged illegal poker games. And a final reminder of our top stories. The US imposes sanctions on Russia, targeting their 2 largest oil companies. Putin's responded, calling them an unfriendly act. Marco Rubio arrives in Israel, becoming the latest US state official to visit the region during a shaky ceasefire. And making history. King Charles prays with Pope Leo at the Vatican, becoming the first British monarch to do so in 500 years. And that's all from us on W News, but don't forget, as always, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on X. We're back in just a couple of hours with W News Extra, but for now, goodbye.